Today we're diving into something pretty fascinating, and I'll be honest, it's got me craving a good cup of coffee. But not just any coffee, we're talking about the future of coffee. Beanless coffee. That's right, you heard me right. And for this deep dive, we're taking cues from a really interesting article in the download. So, are you ready to ditch the beans?
I am. It's not every day you get to talk about a total reinvention of something as widely loved as coffee. This goes way beyond just being a bit more sustainable, right?
Right. And we have to talk about it. Climate change is really impacting our daily cup. I mean, have you noticed those coffee prices going up? That's climate change brewing trouble. Those poor coffee plants are dealing with rising temperatures, wild weather, new diseases. It's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, composting coffee grounds and using a reusable mug is great and all, but it's really just trying to make a resource-heavy process a little bit less impactful. This feels different.
Yeah, this is a total paradigm shift. And that's where Prefer Coffee comes in, this company in Singapore that's totally changing the game.
And it's not just that they are using food waste, but they're really tapping into local waste streams. Leftover bread, soybean pulp for making tofu, used barley grains. Things that would normally be tossed are finding a new life as sustainable coffee. Using what's already there locally, that could really be a game changer for this whole sustainability thing.
Okay, but I have to admit, when I first heard coffee from bread, I was a bit skeptical. But then I read about their process and wow.
It's all about those microbes, right? This whole idea of a circular economy where we're reusing and repurposing to cut down on waste. That's what this is. Prefer Coffee uses a really controlled fermentation process, kind of like how we make yogurt or kimchi. And those tiny organisms, they work their magic, breaking down the food waste and creating a flavor profile that's surprisingly similar to regular coffee.
So instead of roasting beans, they're essentially roasting fermented bread. That's some serious food science at work.
Oh, absolutely. They're even using this technique called gas chromatography mass spectrometry.
Say that again?
I know, it's a mouthful, right? But basically, they're breaking down the molecular compounds in the ingredients.
So it's not just about trying to make it taste similar. They're analyzing it on a molecular level to try and recreate those chocolatey, herbaceous notes you find in a good cup of coffee.
Precisely. And you know what really struck me? Their commitment to offering both regular and decaf options. But for the caffeine kick, they're using tea leaves, much gentler on the environment, especially as our planet warms.
Smart move. Okay, but let's talk taste. I have to know, what does this beanless coffee actually taste like?
Well, they're really focused on replicating those familiar coffee flavors, right? But what's cool is that they're using such a diverse range of ingredients. It makes me think about the possibilities if they expand globally and tap into unique local flavors.
Wait, are you saying a bread coffee in Singapore would taste different from, say, a cassava coffee in the Philippines?
Exactly. That's what I mean. They wouldn't be limited to just one type of food waste. The possibilities are huge.
Wow, talk about going from food waste to a whole new world of coffee. This is blowing my mind a little bit. Okay, but hold on. Tell me more about these unique, localized flavor profiles. This is just too good.
Well, imagine sipping on a cup of coffee made from fermented durian fruit in Malaysia.
Okay, now that's a conversation starter. I can see some people thinking that's a bit out there, but you know what? I'm here for it. It's like, you're not just buying a drink, right? You're buying an experience. A little peek into a future where coffee is, I don't know, more sustainable, definitely more adventurous.
Absolutely. And I think it really speaks to our desire to try new things, to kind of reimagine what something like coffee can be.
Speaking of reimagining, this whole thing has me thinking about the bigger picture. Food security, and the role innovation can play in all of this. This isn't just about coffee. It's about potentially revolutionizing one of the most popular drinks in the world.
You're absolutely right. We started with something familiar, a cup of coffee, but it really makes you think about the whole food system. I mean, if we can make delicious coffee out of things like bread or durian fruit, what else can we do? Especially with climate change impacting so many of our favorite foods.
It's like Prefer Coffee is showing us a different way forward, but let's be real, scaling up something like this globally, that can't be easy. What kinds of challenges do you think they might run into?
Well, if they want to replicate this in other parts of the world, they'd have to adapt to what's locally available, right? I mean, their process depends on specific things. Bread, soy pulp, barley. Those might not be as easy to come by in, say, South America or Africa.
So it's not just about taking their recipe and setting up shop somewhere new. They'd need to be like experts in regional food waste. That's a different kind of coffee expertise.
Right. And remember how that article talked about their fermentation process being adaptable?
Yeah.
That's going to be key. They'll have to analyze food waste wherever they go, figure out the important flavor compounds, and tweak their process. It's a real scientific and logistical challenge.
That's amazing. They're practically creating a whole new map of coffee flavors. But even if the taste is there and it's sustainable, don't they still have to convince people to actually drink it? Coffee is like steeped in tradition, you know?
Oh, absolutely. That's the other challenge. Getting people to embrace beanless coffee, even if it tastes the same, is a big deal. There's just something about that bag of beans, that ritual. Some people might even say, and I apologize for the pun, that the idea of coffee without beans is unbeanbelievable.
Okay, you got me there. But seriously, changing those habits, that's a tall order. Remember when oat milk was considered weird? And now look at it. How do you think a shift like that happens?
It's a slow burn, you know. I think it starts with a change in values. As people become more aware of how their choices impact the environment, they're more open to trying alternatives. Like you said, plant-based milk. Used to be a niche thing, now it's everywhere. The same thing could happen with beanless coffee.
Especially if they play up the exotic angle. Sipping coffee made from fermented durian fruit in Malaysia. Now that's a story you tell your friends.
Exactly. It goes beyond the taste. It becomes an experience, right? There's a story behind what you're drinking.
And honestly, who doesn't love a good food science story? Speaking of which, how does Prefer Coffee actually turn, let's say, that durian fruit into something resembling my morning coffee? Where do they even begin?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. You see, they found certain compounds. Well, they found these compounds that are actually in tons of foods. And when they're broken down through, you guessed it, fermentation, they create those coffee-like flavors we love. It's like they cracked the code. They figured out what makes coffee taste like coffee without using any actual beans.
So it's less about mimicking the exact taste of a traditional cup and more about capturing that essence of coffee.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, but real talk. How long until I can walk into my local coffee shop and order a beanless latte? What does all this mean for the average coffee drinker? You know, someone who's maybe listening to us right now, sipping their regular cup.
Well, these kinds of innovations, they take time. It's not like everyone's going to ditch their favorite beans overnight. It's about opening up to new possibilities.
It's like you have your favorite pizza place, right? But that doesn't mean you can't try that new Thai restaurant down the street. You might discover a new favorite. Exactly. And in the meantime, there are still so many ways to be a more sustainable coffee drinker. Look for those fair trade certifications, support those brands that are making an effort. Even just experimenting with brewing methods that produce less waste can make a difference.
This whole conversation has really got me thinking. If we can make coffee from food waste, what else is possible? Bread-based bagels? Chocolate from mango pits. I'm ready for it.
That's the beauty of deep dives like this, isn't it? It gets you thinking bigger, beyond what we think is possible. The future of food could be a lot more sustainable and a lot more delicious than we ever imagined.
That is a great point to end on. So next time you're enjoying your morning cup of coffee, whether it's the classic bean or something brewed up from durian fruit, take a second and think about the journey it took to get to your cup and what it represents. Because the future of flavor is looking pretty exciting, and it all starts with a little curiosity and an open mind.